We are 34a, the very top, and we're continuing with the story of the crossing of the Jordan. As soon as the Kohanim stepped out of the river, so remember the Kohanim were carrying the ark, they stepped into the river split, people crossed, and the Gemara is assuming here that the Kohanim didn't cross now, like they stepped in on the east bank. As soon as they stepped in, the water split, and they stepped out back onto the east bank. Meanwhile, everybody else has crossed over. So Shanamar, as it says, when the ark carriers came to the Jordan, the waters stood up in one column. How did, I'm sorry, we're not talking about getting out yet. That's a little further on. So this is when they stepped into the water, the water split and it rose kind of in one column. How high did the water get? So like imagine the water's flowing downstream and all of a sudden it stops and it just goes vertical instead of horizontal. So how high did it go? So 12 mil by 12 mil. That's how much water, because the calculation here seems to be that if that's the size of the people, of the group of people, 12 mil by 12 mil, that was let's say what we take to be the size of the camp. So the water starts flowing upward as the people start crossing. So the time that it takes for all the people to cross is the time of the traveling 12 mil by 12 mil. And we're assuming, although we'll question this in a minute, we're assuming the water is going at the same pace. So that's how high the water went, 12 mil by 12 mil, just like the crossing of the people. Got it? So, Rabbi Shimon said, according to you, Adam Kalam, I'm calling. First of all, what makes you think that the speed of the water is the same as the speed of the people walking, right? Actually, I would say that water flows faster than people walk. So of course that depends on the slope and everything. But he's saying, well, I imagine that the speed of the water flowing down the Jordan was greater than the speed of the people crossing. So then it would have been more water than 12 mil by 12 mil. So if that's the case, then the water, if the water only piled up 12 mil by 12 mil, then the people would not have finished yet crossing because the water goes faster. So then if that's the case, that's how high the water got, and then it returned to where it was, there still would have been people in the riverbed, would have washed them away. Keeping al gabi keeping, Ella Malame, but rather it teaches you Shayumayim Nigdashin Ve'olin, keeping al gabi keeping. No, it went even higher than that, wave upon wave upon wave, Yeser Mishlosh Meos Mil, more than 300 mil. Ad Sharo Osan Kol Malche Mizrach Umarav, until it was so high that all the kingdoms in the east and the west, everybody could see it. Shanamar Vahiki Shmuel Kol Malche Hamari Asher B'Ever Yarden Yama V'Chol Malche Knani Asher Al Yam Es Asher Hovi Hashem Es Mei Hayarden Mebnei Yisrael Ad Avram. It says when all the kings of the Amori and the Kanani and everybody heard that God had dried up the Jordan, then Vayimas Levavam, then they were afraid. Their hearts melted literally. And that kind of defeated their spirit, and they could not oppose the people of Israel. So although it says in the verse when they heard, but we're taking it as how did they hear? They saw the column of water that was 300 mil high. And so said Rachav, who was the innkeeper who housed the spies, Joshua's spies in Jericho. She also said the same thing to them. We heard how God dried up the Yamsuf, that's the Red Sea, and she continues, and the Jordan, and we heard, and our hearts melted, and we had no spirit left. Okay, so Odom B'Yarden, they're still in the Jordan River. I want you to understand about this, about crossing. Why are you crossing the Jordan? To drive out to take over the land from the people who are currently living there. It says you will drive out all of all of those who live there. If you do that, then great. And if not, then the water is going to come and crash down on you and drown you, which is reminiscent to me of the midrash about Mount Sinai, right? That the revelation where God, according to one midrash, held up the mountain over them like a barrel and said, if you accept the Torah, great. If not, I'm going to bury you right here. Okay. My osichem. Let's see, where's the word? Oh yeah, the last word of this Bryce says shotfin osichem. So it's unusual. There's an extra yud in there. It ordinarily would say and will wash you away. The you is oschem, but it says osichem. Osi v'eschem. So it's an allusion to like not just you, but me too. Like Shua is saying to them, obviously I'm down with what God wants, but if you're not, then I'm going to get wiped out too. Still there in the Jordan. Yeshua says to them, everybody pick up a rock to correspond to the 12 tribes. And then it says, so that you'll have a sign, this is kind of a monument to what happened here today. So when your children ask you, you'll be able to point to these stones and tell them the story. It will be a sign or a monument to the sons that their ancestors crossed the Jordan miraculously. They're still in the Jordan. Yeshua said to them, now take another 12 stones from where the Kohanim are standing, holding the ark. Take 12 stones. Take them across with you. And set them up at the place where you're going to sleep tonight. Maybe that means every place that you're going to sleep, like, every night during the conquest of Canaan. No, it says specifically only this one night. That wherever you sleep tonight, that's where you're going to set up these 12 stones. Rabbi Elazar ben Masya b'Chananya ben Chachinai. These three Tanaim, Amdu al Osan Avanim, they actually stood on those stones. They actually saw those stones. Visharum Kalachas Viachas Shkula Kiarbaim Sa. And each of these stones, they were quite large. They measured 40 sa. So we're talking like huge boulders. And we know that a person can put on his shoulder is a third of the weight that you can carry if other people help you put it on, right? So if you can hoist 50 pounds onto your shoulder, then if other people put weight on you, you can carry up to 150 pounds. Okay, 3 times what you can hoist yourself. So mikan atamachashiv lashkel. So now we know we can figure out how big the clusters of grapes that were carried by Moshe's spies when they returned from Canaan. Remember, they were carrying these big grapes, and they say how huge everything is there. So if we know that these people could lift these 40 saw boulders on their own, then it must be that what they could carry if someone else lifted it on them onto their back would be 120 saw. 3 times 40 shenamar. And how do I know that they had help? Talking about the spies, when it says when they carried back the produce of the land, so they carried on a pole by 2s, right? Like if you're carrying something on a pole, 2 people carrying a pole on which is suspended a burden, right? Obviously 2 people are carrying it. So why does it say 2? They took it by 2 people to a pole. That's obvious. Why does it say 2 people? Bishnei motos, talking about 2 poles. Rabbi Yitzchak, Turtene v'Turtene de Turtene. Rabbi Yitzchak says there were actually two sets of poles. In other words, like you have, imagine a square, right, where you've got two poles going north and south, and on top of those are two more poles going east and west. So it's like a square. Okay, so how do we get that? Shmona nasu eshkol, because there were 12 spies, right? But only 10 of them were in the plot to destabilize the situation. Shua and Kalev weren't involved in this, so there were 10 left. So one was carrying a rimon, one was carrying a fig, and the other, there's 8 left. They were carrying the grapes. So if there were 8, that means there were 4 poles, right? 2 to a pole. So that's how we get the idea that they were carrying it in this like square formation. And why did Yeshua Kalev nasu klum? Yeshua Kalev didn't carry anything. Maybe because they were very distinguished, and they wouldn't be the ones carrying the burden. They were like the leaders, but I don't understand that, because the other ones were also like they were presumably also distinguished. But the Gemara gives another answer, because they weren't part of the plan to destabilize the situation there. Okay, hang on one second, sorry. Be right with you. Okay. Unfortunately, I have to get back on with my mom's doctor. So I'm gonna have to call it here. Tomorrow should be a normal schedule, and we'll try and cover the rest of today's stuff and tomorrow's as well. So I apologize for the disruption in the schedule, and thanks for bearing with me. Okay, so we'll pick it up here again tomorrow. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.